This is Hammond.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast.
And if you donate, you might get a shout out like this.
Oh, yes. We want to thank some of our newest Patreons. Ryan F., Stu P., Jessica H., Scott W., Randy E., Andrew F. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It means a lot.
All right. Are you ready to talk about a bunch of stuff?
We usually make like small talk at the beginning of the...
I have nothing to say to you.
We just came back from dinner. We've made all of our small talks, and I had a margarita.
So this is going to be real good.
Yeah. It was one small one. How dare you? Okay.
It was giant.
So...
All right. Let's start with the saddest news of today, just because it happened, which is Anthony Bourdain died of suicide. I didn't watch the show. I saw a bunch of clips over the years and stuff, and it's like, oh, even that much. I'm like, that's
I'm
depressing.
in the same boat. I didn't watch him, but like I hear nothing but good things.
Right. And the reason I wanted to bring it up specifically for our purposes is because I swear within like 2 hours of his death being announced, the Catholic League's Bill Donohue chimed in. And here's the thing. Every time a celebrity dies, you know a few things are going to happen. You know that religious people, some of them, more the extremist kinds, are going to be like, well, that person didn't accept Jesus. They're burning in hell. They did that with Stephen Hawking. In this case, Bourdain wasn't known for really talking about religion, but he was openly not a religious person. His parents were mixed faith. What was his?
It was Catholic and Jewish.
Yeah, Catholic and Jewish. He said he was raised without religion. He didn't like certainty. He talked about how he's all about doubt, questioning oneself and the nature of reality. He really liked Christopher Hitchens. So this is a guy who is not religious, but that's not what he's known for. But Bill Donohue, the Catholic
It wasn't like
League,
if like I died and people are like, she had some things going on. Like the thing people would know about me is that I'm the angry atheist person.
Like his non-religion did not show up in the obituaries.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so here's what Bill Donohue said today. If Anthony Bourdain had been a religious man, would he have killed himself? Probably not. And already you're just like, oh,
Sucks.
You're making me angry already.
Aside from like being a really shitty hot take, like how inappropriate, how deeply and desperately inappropriate.
Yeah, and it gets worse because it's not just this totally irrational idea that if he had religion, and I'll talk about that in a second, where he's even getting this from, but this idea that here's what Donohue did. He didn't just say that, he plugged his book.
He plugged his book,
in
Evan.
the process, and to justify what he was saying. Here's the thing about what he's saying. What his argument is that studies have shown, and I'm quoting here, there is an inverse relationship between religiosity and suicide. Those who are regular churchgoers have a much lower rate of suicide. That totally discounts what every one of these studies has ever shown, because it's also the same type of studies that say depression and religion are inverse relationship too. And you're happier if you have religion in your life. And what they all also say, if they're good researchers, is it's not that if you believe in God, you're going to be happier. It's that if you belong to a church, you are part of a tight-knit community. You can lean on each other for social support. You have something to look forward to. You have something that makes you happy.
Right.
And it's not just church.
And
if you're part of a sports team, if you're part of a fraternity or sorority.
Yeah, humans need community.
Yeah. And if you have that, you tend to be less likely to be depressed or suicidal. That's all that those studies show. And he jumped to this conclusion that, well, if he had just had God in his life, none of this would have happened, which is BS.
Right. And I kind of dug into sort of his claims because I just wanted to know, like, did he like pull this out of thin air? Is it based on anything? So I found a couple of studies, and a lot of them, there are lines of conclusion that say if you are an American who is within a religious community, your chances of attempting or completing suicide are lower. It does not necessarily reduce your thoughts of suicide. It's just generally your attempts. But that's in America. So if you look in Asian countries, for example, America and Central America tend to follow that trend. If you look in Asia, it's the inverse, which, I mean, there's a million reasons that's true, right? Like the relationship in many Asian cultures with religion is extremely different than like, say how like your general run-of-the-mill Christian is in the US. But what it does, so like, am I saying there's really important things to draw from that? No. What I am saying is it is not an A to B thing. It is not if you believe in God, you won't
It's complicated.
A, have suicidal thoughts, B, attempt suicide, or C, complete suicide.
And by the way, even in America, what they have found in studies is that if you're, for example, LGBTQ and you're in a deeply religious community, your rates of suicide are higher.
Yes.
So, I mean, the whole point is Bill Donohue's an idiot.
Right.
But we
and
knew
like,
that.
and these pulling these statistics sort of out of context is really unhelpful, because when we talk about suicide attempts versus suicide completions, if you have a gun in the household, you're much more likely to complete suicide as opposed to if you don't, because it's very difficult to survive a gunshot to, a self-inflicted gunshot. Whereas if you swallow pills or do something else, so I was beside myself at this, and I saw your tweet today and was just like, I knew it was coming. It comes every single time. It sucks every time. Like, you want them to be above it. And also, Donohue not only I printed out his whole quote unquote statement, which was so shitty, but he ended it. So he talks about suicide rates have spiked dramatically in recent years in nearly every state. Indeed, suicide, blah, blah, blah. Oh, God, where is it? He said something about, blah, blah, blah. The 8 authors of the study that he's citing, the Vital Signs, Trends in Suicide Rates United States, 1999-2016, and Circumstances Contributing to Suicide, 27 States, 2015, excuse me. It says nothing about religion, he says. Quote, the 8 authors of the study disaggregate the data on the bias of sex, age, race, ethnicity, and other factors, but not on religion. This is inexcusable. Virtually all studies on suicide include the variable of religiosity or religious practice and commitment.
So he not only trashed Bourdain right after his death, he slammed the researchers for not doing the research he wanted them to do.
And this is his closing paragraph. Oh, excuse me. So he plugs he plugs his book first. Obviously, it's called something.
It doesn't matter.
I'm full of garbage. The last thing is, may Anthony Bourdain rest in peace, and may the CDC hire more astute scholars. And then my head burst into flames. So yeah, this was not a great day. I'm going to do my. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. One of the complaints I always hear is we're doing what he wants, which is he wants to capitalize on the media attention given to Anthony Bourdain. So he's talking about himself. And this is what groups do. Hey, you want to talk about Bourdain? You're going to have to talk about us too. And the response I get is, I wrote a post about this, is why are you giving him attention? That is what he wants. Here's the reason. Because you have to see what these people are doing. Because yeah, they want the attention, but the people who are reading it from me, through me, they're not fans. Same with Westboro Baptist Church. I know they want attention. That's why they do all the stuff they do.
Well, and it's, with due respect to you and your blog, like, it's not like Washington Post picking it up.
Yeah.
Like,
no, totally. But the thing is, when anyone shares the stuff that they're doing, I think it does more damage to them, for one.
I would hope so.
And it shows the whole mindset in a negative light, that most of the people who see this story are not going to think, well, Donohue has a point.
Right.
No, they're going to walk away thinking, what a dick. And not just him, but in this case, like, well, look what his Catholic beliefs made him do. I want nothing to do with that. I think Westboro, if anything else, they've ruined a lot of individual, like those funerals, what they did to those families, horrible. At the same time, whenever they protest somewhere, it's like you're pushing more people away from Christianity and your personal or your particular views.
Right.
So at the same time, like, all right, if you want to make a fuss about whatever.
You mean you don't think those signs with the laundry list of sins are helpful?
Right. Those preachers.
In like video game players.
The ones showing up to college campuses like you're all sodomites.
Yeah.
It's like, go ahead, buddy. you talk about whatever you want to talk about because you're helping my side here.
Right.
Which is why I love when atheist groups hand out bingo cards of all the stupid things they say.
That's awesome.
It's like, we know he's going to say this stuff. Let's have fun with it to show how ridiculous he is.
I do want to do my sort of thing that I have to do way too frequently is my kind of mental health corner of, hey, I deal with depression too. I have had suicidal thoughts too. Depression. Okay. What I think is interesting, interesting is a really dark word, but Anthony Bourdain was beloved. He had objectively the coolest life ever. He seemed to have everything going for him. And if nothing else, that shows that depression is a hell of a thing. And I would argue, I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, he had everything, whatever. There is something really horrible about when you have a moment of like, oh, this is the thing I always wanted, and I still feel like shit, and I still hate myself. And that's powerful, and it's scary. And depression and anxiety and all that is something that I read an interesting tweet about. Depression is really tailored to you. It's like your own personal demon that you know your own insecurities and your own dark thoughts and all that, and your brain is using that against you when you're dealing with depression. So if you feel sad, if you feel like you're struggling, if you feel hopeless, reach out. I know it's impossible. It's so hard, but find something. People care about you. There's hotlines to call. Go see a therapist. Get an antidepressant. And the other thing is like the treatments are hard too. It's not like like you snap your fingers. I was lucky. I liked my therapist. I clicked into her right away, and my antidepressant worked for me right away. A lot of people go through. A friend of mine has been dealing with depression and anxiety since she was in high school. She's my age, so in her early 30s. It took until like 2 years ago to find a balance of medication that helps her anxiety and help. It's hard. It's worth it. We need you here. If you're feeling shitty, get help. That's my PSA.
Agreed.
I sure do wish I didn't have to do that so often.
Seriously.
But yeah.
Do you want to talk about, this happened last week, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it earlier this week, actually.
Did it?
The Masterpiece Cakeshop ruling. And what I wanted to talk about, a couple things in particular, which is, okay, well, here's what we know by now. It was a 7-2 decision. Mm-hmm. The baker who's told the gay couple, I'm not making you a wedding cake, that guy won. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a couple aspects of this case, though, in particular. Yeah.
Do you know, really quick, it's been described as it was a narrow decision. Yeah. Do you know the specifics of what that means? Because that doesn't mean it was like a 5-4 decision.
No, it was 7-2, and like Donald Trump Jr. is like, yeah, that's not a narrow win.
Yeah, can you explain what that means?
What it means is basically, here's all it means. The decision that they made, which said basically the Christian baker won, applies to the Christian baker and nobody else. As opposed to, let's say, the gay marriage ruling.
Is that what it is?
That's all, yeah. As opposed to like the Obergefell ruling from years ago, where that was not narrow. That didn't say, you, Jim Obergefell, like you get to get married. Nope, it's legal nationwide now. That's a pretty broad ruling.
I feel so dumb because I could have looked that up in a second.
It's all good. But, so it's a narrow ruling. Here's the thing I want to talk about. One thing is that for Christians, the conservative Christians who really wanted this guy to win, this may have been the worst possible outcome, even though they won. And here's two ways to look at it. So in other words,
it doesn't set precedents for...
Does not set precedent for the future. They want it to set precedent. It will not. And they've made that, Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the decision, made that pretty damn clear that it applies to you and not everybody else. They kind of punted down the road, like, we'll deal with the cake-making gay people stuff later. But for this case, all they basically said is, in Colorado, when they ruled against the baker...
That stood?
No,
that didn't stand because
they overruled it, but they said they were kind of mean to your religion. That's it. They said the method that they used to say that you were in the wrong, they were not following the rules properly. They were hostile to your faith. So we didn't like the system they used. So their decision, we're overturning it. That's why it only applies to you. What they did not say is that Christian bakers can just say no to gay people who want cake. They did not rule on that. They didn't rule on any of that.
Gotcha.
So all the stuff that conservative Christians really wanted them to say, they didn't get it. They also didn't lose the case, which means they couldn't go out and say, look, they're out to get us.
We're being persecuted once
give
again.
Us money. We're being persecuted. They didn't get that either.
That's very interesting.
They got a victory in the narrowest sense of the word. So it's like, hey, we won. but it doesn't count for much because whatever. I think the guys are already married. Like, it's over. This thing happened years ago. So, like,
and they probably already had cake, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Damn right. So in some ways, it's like, this is really, even though
It's hollow.
they won, it's pretty hollow. Yeah. Another thing to bring up here, first of all, it was 7-2, which means some of the liberal justices, quote unquote, went on the other side. Only Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor said no.
Yeah. Well,
but all the other ones said yes. One thing that came up in
who wrote the majority opinion?
Kennedy, who's been the champion of gay rights on the Supreme Court, which is also, it's like, well, why would he do this thing for the cake and the gay couple? Because he wasn't saying the gay couple was wrong. He didn't rule on that.
So this is a thing that, like, sort of the mythology, the mythos surrounding it is way outstripping what actually happened and the consequences thereof.
What I've seen this week is a lot of Christian right groups have been blasting about, like, look, we won. This is a victory for bakers. It's not. It doesn't do a damn thing for anything because the Supreme Court decidedly did not want to take on this issue. Mm-hmm. They said, here, Colorado, this one case, there you go. The rest of you, you'll have to come back to us.
But you still disagree with their decision.
Oh, yeah, it's still wrong. Because Anthony Kennedy specifically said they were hostile to faith. Let me quote the thing that he said was the biggest problem, okay? So he was saying that during the discussion that they had, he cited this statement made by one of the commissioners. This is after they already had meetings where they said, should we punish this guy? Like, was he wrong?
I'm sorry, just sidebar. Hasn't this guy gone out of business too?
No, he's still in business.
There was some cake maker that's gone out of business.
It might have been the one in Washington State. I don't know.
Okay, anyway, go ahead.
But anyway, one of the commissioners at one of the meetings down the line, after they'd kind of already decided to punish this guy, said at a public meeting, I would also like to reiterate what we said in the hearing or the last meeting. Freedom of religion and religion has been used to justify all kinds of discrimination throughout history, whether it be slavery, whether it be the Holocaust, whether it be... I mean, we can list hundreds of situations where freedom of religion has been used to justify discrimination. Yeah. And to me, it is one of the most despicable pieces of rhetoric that people can use to use their religion to hurt others.
I'm waiting for him to say something untrue.
Right. All of that was accurate. Yeah. He was not saying what the cake maker Jack Phillips did was like the Holocaust or like was slavery. He was just saying religion can be used to discriminate. And our commission, he's implying, was right to say you can't just use your faith to get out of like treating these people.
You can't punch somebody in the face and say Jesus told me to.
Right. That's what he said. Anthony Kennedy saw that and said they were clearly biased and hostile against religion, and that's why they should not have made the decision that they did. So, okay, that was a stupid decision on Kennedy's part. He actually said that sentiment, talking about the slavery Holocaust line, is inappropriate for a commission charged with the solemn responsibility of fair and neutral enforcement of Colorado's anti-discrimination law. The Supreme Court, cannot avoid the conclusion that these statements cast doubt on the fairness and impartiality of the commission's adjudication of Phillips' case. By the way, they had already ruled on his case. It was a done deal. This comment came afterwards.
I was just dunking on him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. And by the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is like, whatever one may think of the statements in a historical context, I see no reason why the comments of one or two commissioners should be taken to overcome the baker's refusal to sell a wedding cake to the gay guys. Yeah.
Ruth, I love you so much.
One other thing that Neil Gorsuch, who wrote in agreement with Kennedy, but wrote a separate opinion, one thing he brought up is the left does this too. And for example, what he said is, it turns out in Colorado, there was someone else, a guy named, I want to get this right, William Jack, not to be confused with Jack Phillips. Hold the thought here. Well, a guy named William Jack went to 3 other bakers, presumably more liberal bakers, and said, I want you to make me a cake which says anti-gay phrases on them. Anti-gay Bible verses. I want you to draw that on the cake.
Oh, I remember this happening.
And all 3 of the bakers said, we're not doing that. And what Gorsuch basically said is, no one had a problem when those bakers said no to the Christian guy who had a hateful message. And so there was nothing wrong with Jack Phillips saying no to the gay couple. You have a right as a baker to use your art as you see it. But there's a difference.
There is a difference, but I also see the point that
No,
he's trying
you don't
to
see the
make.
point. You don't see the point.
I'm
Here's
sorry.
why.
I'm sorry,
Because the
Hammond.
difference is...
I understand the difference. I do. Hammond, you know, me saying that I see where he's coming from is extremely painful for me.
He's wrong. He's wrong
I'm not
because...
I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying I get where the argument is. I don't think it's right.
I get his logic.
Yes.
Here's why it's still wrong. He's wrong because anyone can say that's a hateful message that he wanted to put on the cakes. So we can say no. You can say no to a hateful message. The difference in the Colorado case that is at stake here was that these gay guys didn't say put a pro-gay message on the cake.
It was just
They just said,
names.
hey, we're gay and we want to buy a cake. And the guy said, I'm not serving you two.
Yeah. And the other thing...
That's the difference. And by the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Elena Kagan pointed that out. And here's Elena Kagan's dissent. I'm sorry. She concurred with the overall ruling.
Okay.
But she disagreed with this point of it. She said the bakers didn't single out that William Jack guy because of his religion, but instead they treated him the same way they would have treated anyone else. Mm-hmm. By contrast, the gay couple in this case requested a wedding cake that he would have made for an opposite sex couple.
Yes.
This is apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Totally different. You cannot compare them, Neil Gorsuch.
And the other thing that I think is important to point out is saying to compare those two things is disingenuous. Again, I get the logic. It doesn't mean I agree with it. Don't at me on Twitter. Like I understand how his
right. It's just
how he
faulty
got
logic,
there.
though. It's a total
But
fallacy.
Because if I were Jewish and I went into a bakery and said, "Can you make me a cake with the Star of David?" and if Hammond was a Nazi and went into a bakery and said, "Make me a cake with the swastika on it," I think nobody would misunderstand why one is appropriate and the other is inappropriate. So I think that's the same thing as like, I guess that's...
But also, and the issue here is if a gay couple just said, we want to buy the same thing you already sell to other people, can a Christian discriminate against them? The answer should be no. And in this case, they didn't answer that question. They just sidestepped it and said, the process
was mean.
you used was mean.
It's like when somebody gets off from a crime on a technicality. Like
Yeah, more or
it's
less.
not. This isn't. This is like shifting the conversation.
Which is why, by the way, it's like 7-2. Oh my God, some liberal justices voted for this too. Yeah, but look at they weren't ruling that it's okay to discriminate. Nobody said it's okay to discriminate.
Yeah.
So take that as a silver lining if you want. This case hasn't been resolved. I'm not saying it would go the right way, even if like the right case came to the court.
Right.
But
Right
at
now,
least in this
nothing
case,
changed.
bullet dodged.
My favorite hot take off this was a buddy of mine posted on Facebook, like just a screen grab of a tweet or something like that, and it was like, next time you go to a bakery, say, "I'm gay and I want a marriage cake," and depending on if they say okay, then you say, "Just kidding, I needed a cake for my kid's birthday," or whatever. And
Just wanted to see if you were normal.
yeah, which fine with the sentiment, that's fair. If you want to support people who support the LGBTQ community, fine. But my issue with it is like, maybe don't say marriage cake because you. You sound like an alien trying to pretend to be a human. Say wedding cake like a regular person, and maybe that, just to me, that one, weird misspeaking thing, it was like, well, you're an idiot. I'm not going to take anything you say seriously. Anyway, #marriage cake.
Here's one that surprised me because I wasn't sure when I first heard the story which way I would go. It's a similar story. It's a religious discrimination question. Mm-hmm. And I heard it. I'm like, my first instinct was screw the person with the religious objection.
Sure.
No, they're discriminating against a trans person. And then the more I read about it, it's like, well, now I'm not so sure.
Wait, is this the teacher?
No.
Oh.
So here's the story. It happened in Canada. So the laws are a little different. So I don't know.
It's not one-to-one, yeah.
It's not one-to-one. But here's the story. A transgender woman went to a salon in Ontario and said, I want to get waxed. Mm-hmm. All right, fine. There's some confusion that she said she wanted her legs waxed, but the owner of the salon said, no, she said bikini wax in that area. Whatever. But the issue was there was only one person working. It was a Muslim woman who said, I can't touch your genitalia because it's male genitalia. It's a penis. Sorry, I'm using the word male. That's the wrong word to use. I can't touch your penis. You're not my husband, basically. Right. Huh. And so the trans woman is now suing the salon, citing discrimination. And the owner's like, that this is a different issue. We didn't say you can't come here, but the time you wanted to come, this person was the only one who had the ability to service you. And she has a legitimate religious objection to doing what you needed done.
It makes me really nervous that you just said legitimate religious objection, because I don't know what that line is.
I know. All the wording here, by the way, I tried running this by a couple friends. I'm like, look, this is what we're trying to say in this piece. I don't want to get the wording wrong, which is totally what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
But the question is, who's in the right here? The trans woman who said you're discriminating against me because of who I am, or the Muslim woman who said I have a religious objection to
touching penises.
And I kind of get that religious objection, even if I don't know how the Ontario court is going to rule.
Well, I guess.
And by the way, I should also point out that if you have a penis, then getting a Brazilian wax requires a different set of skills than a woman would. I'm sorry, that someone without a penis would. You know what I'm saying?
No. But I want to be clear. A Brazilian is not the same as a bikini wax. Shit. I want to be extremely clear about this.
We should just start all over with this.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm saying everything wrong. But
no,
please.
and that's not okay. So
Brazilian is the word they used.
So they use Brazilian. Yeah. Okay, so to me that changes a lot because a bikini wax is just like if you're wearing a bathing suit, it's everything that would be or underwear or whatever. It's everything that like would be showing above like a skimpy bikini or whatever. A Brazilian is forgive the term, a different ball of wax. I'm sorry. It was poorly timed, and I wasn't happy about it when I said it. As somebody who has had waxings done, I would definitely want somebody who's like familiar with that. Like, I don't want somebody wandering in there blind, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Because there's the genital region is very different. And if somebody's pouring fucking hot wax on my chotch, I want them to know the area.
If the trans woman said, I want a leg wax, we'd be having a different conversation.
I would argue even if just a straight up and down bikini wax, we would have a different but like, for women, not to get blue, I think my parents listen, I'm sorry you guys, but like for a bikini wax, a Brazilian wax, you're removing all of the hair down there. And it is very painful, be time consuming, and very intimate and technical.
Yeah, and I don't know how the courts, even in a different area in Canada, I don't know how you can enforce nope, she had to touch.
But all that's to say that doesn't to me say. I guess I don't know if this woman who objected, was she objecting on religious grounds or was she objecting on this is not something I'm trained to do?
As far as I could tell when I was looking at articles for this, she never said, I'm not trained to do this, though that may have been the case. She cited a religious objection to touching penises because that's...
But is that... I don't know. I'm really, really... I see why this is a tricky one.
Right.
Because religion aside, if I, as a professional waxer, say, I do not want to work on... Or can you do that as a masseuse? I don't want to massage, and I don't know. I'm asking that earnestly. I don't know. Isn't it my right to say I don't want to touch a dick? It's not like if you go to your gynecologist and say I need a prostate exam, it's not. Again, it's apples to oranges.
The question comes down to: was this discrimination against a trans woman? I
don't know,
and I don't know that it is. My first reaction is that's totally discrimination. When I actually read the story more carefully, it's I don't think that's discrimination because you're not saying you're trans, I'm not going to work with you. It's you have a specific body part that I feel very uncomfortable. My religion says I can't touch it. Therefore, I need to bow out.
Yeah. And I want to sort of cover our ass right now somewhat of I hope we're not saying anything uncouth or inappropriate.
I know I said like 100 things right now that it's wrong language, whatever. Like,
Yes.
I get it. I'm sorry.
We are genuinely doing our best.
We're two cis people who have no idea how we're talking.
Yeah. So I want to kind of put that out there of like, if we're being shitty, I'm very, very sorry. And by all means, email us and tell us in what ways we're being shitty and how we can be better.
I would really like to hear from trans people who would have a stake in this, I guess, who would say like, I get where that Muslim woman is coming from, or this would be discrimination
or like, fuck
to
off,
me.
You're gonna give me this service that...
Unlike most of the things I read about, I tried running this by several people saying like, this is the take we're taking on this. I didn't write the article, it was someone else. But I'm like, I agreed with the take that the author wrote.
And what was the take?
The take was, it seems like the religious woman has a legitimate reason to say no. And I'm like, this is the argument we're making. Are we missing something here? And basically all of them came back and said, it's complicated.
It's extremely complicated.
By the way, the trans woman who's complaining, that's the technical word, to the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, is seeking $50,000 for what she calls, quote, immense harm to my dignity. That's what's at stake here.
Well,
and the salon's owner is just saying this needs to be tossed out.
But also, I understand that for trans people, being misgendered is an extraordinarily stressful situation.
Is this a case of being misgendered, though? I don't know that that's
my God,
the
you're right. I
here.
don't know.
That's not... Yeah, so again, I don't know. Help us out here, you guys, because I have no idea what the right answer is or what more information you need to
because having a
figure it
penis
out.
doesn't mean that you're a man, so that's not what's... Fuck, this is complicated.
It's weird. Do you want to go to a simpler story?
I guess.
Okay. Here's a simpler one. There's a church in Dallas.
You haven't asked me if I had any stories.
Do you have any stories?
Yeah, but later.
All right, fine. There's a church in Dallas, the Greenville Avenue Church of Christ, and they just released a flyer documenting, here's our summer sermon series. All the things we're going to talk about this summer if you come to our
that's
church.
Strong copywriting, my dudes.
Damn right. I made that up.
Wait, you did?
Thank you. They just said summer series. I added the sermon in there. Someone pay me.
We do pay you. You write for a living.
Thanks, Patreon. Here's a list of what they're talking about. They're going to talk about dangerous isms, ideas that you can like. Materialism is bad, so they're going to cover that one week.
Racism is bad.
Well, on the list we have pessimism, materialism, alcoholism, emotionalism, and getting really worked up about that.
Ooh, I'm sorry, emotionalism is not a term.
Here's other stuff they're going to talk about: Islamism, atheism, Judaism. Oh, you know what's not on the list?
Racism. Homophobiaism.
Yeah. Sexism is not on there.
Sexism.
And by the way, they asked the pastor, why aren't you talking about racism or sexism?
He's like, because we sold that in the 60s.
He said, quote, well, there are only so many Wednesdays in a summer.
Yeah, but you can really tackle Judaism. And what was the one that they made up?
Islamism is a word, though. In this context...
Islamophobia, I think is... Wait. Islam is... Oh, no. Oh, he's not talking about Islamophobia.
I don't think he's talking about, like, radical Islam, like, Islamism, like the Sam Harris type of Islam. I think he's just saying Muslims are bad. But the thing is, so the reason this got...
So it's innocent? What are you talking about?
No, like, I think this guy's just racist. But the reason this got so much attention is Judaism was on that list. They didn't care about atheism. They cared about the fact that Judaism was on the list, and people were very upset about it. And by the way, the regional director of the American Jewish Committee in Dallas said, I don't think they have ill intent, but it's the effect that counts. And you're basically to put religion in the same class as alcoholism or materialism. Certainly, he said, while the intent may not have been to be provocative or antagonistic, which is what the minister said, that was the impact.
Bless his heart for really softening that.
Right?
He really took...
Try to give him the benefit of the doubt.
He really did.
Yeah. Anyway, the pastor is still going through with it as far as I know. Here's one thing that was weird, though. I expect this sort of thing maybe from like a hardcore Baptist church. One of those really conservative types. It didn't have it. It said Greenville Avenue Church of Christ. In this case, it's a black church. And usually
And they didn't talk about racism? Or they did talk about racism?
They did not bring up racism.
Really?
The thing is, the pastor Shelton Gibbs III, like usually these pastors of the predominantly black...
a dope name. Shelton or Sheldon?
Shelton.
Shelton Gibbs III.
Dope name and
Fuck yes.
also a dope. After...
God damn it.
I know.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I'm listening. I'm mad at you.
Usually these African-American
We're
churches are pretty good about social justice issues and they tackle issues like racism. And for this guy to go after Jews? Really? Dude.
Yeah, is that your biggest threat right now?
Right.
Black people of America?
Right.
Is that the biggest thing we're facing as a humans?
The sermon series begins this coming Wednesday.
You said it's in Dallas?
It's in Dallas. The first week is going to be denominationalism.
What does that mean?
Doesn't matter. I don't know.
Is it like pity? Okay, so either it's...
Islamism is week 3. Judaism they saved for last. So he has all summer to think about how much he doesn't like Jews.
Yikes. If anybody wants to fly us down, I'd love to go to their thing on atheism.
I'm really curious if they're going to post these online because I want to see these videos.
Oh, let's fly down. Let's fly down. I can go to Texas 3 times this year.
What you got?
Okay, I'm going to start with this one about sexual harassment on university campuses.
Okay.
So, and I don't want to shock you, Hemant, but universities do not handle sexual allegations against tenured professors well.
What?
I know. I'm shocked too. So there's a man named Gabriel Pitterberg, Pitterberg, Pitterberg. I'm not going to try to say your name right. Scumbag. So he's a tenured history professor at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, as the cool kids call it. So he faced 2 sexual allegations of sexual harassment, 2 allegations of sexual harassment in the last 5 years. So, what do you think? So he's tenured. What do you think his consequences were, Hemant?
I'm going to go with nothing for the purpose of this.
After the first accusation, he was barred from closed-door, one-on-one meetings with students in his office and was told by UCLA not to have romantic relationships with students. Apparently that was new. Paid a fine and took a 1-quarter suspension.
Okay.
Which do universities
What was the
function at a quarter?
accusation? Do we know?
Oh, yeah. I sure do know, and it's upsetting. The allegations, according to the legal complaint, included unwelcome comments and forcing his tongue into a graduate student's mouth.
That would do it. Yeah.
Which I get. I would definitely not want an unwelcome tongue in my sort of face region.
Yes. So he was suspended for a quarter.
Yeah. So apparently this has become sort of thematic, and I've got a couple other examples of universities, for whatever reason, and I think this is a whole conversation we should have at some point, is why doesn't the law seem to apply on university campuses? Like if somebody alleges rape or whatever, it seems like the authorities aren't involved. Not to say that if you get the police involved,
like colleges circumvent their system.
Yeah, colleges have this sort of
themselves.
insular community in their own little like bubble of justice, as it were.
I don't know if this is true. Let me talk and get myself in trouble for a second.
Cool.
I thought the universities kind of take control of the investigations. If it's not necessarily like a crime, but it's a question of what happened, who did it, like if it's a he said, she said story, if it is a rape issue or something, I think it does go to the cops, or am I wrong about that?
I mean, I don't have the information in front of me. But like the problem is, okay, but Hemant, you delineated between he said, she said situation and a rape. I think when we see the majority of cases that come to us, right, like that make it into the sort of the public sphere, rape and he said, she said are one and the same. Whereas a mugging, for example, if I got mugged and the guy was like, no, I didn't mug anybody. She gave me her wallet. Nobody's like, well, they both have compelling stories about what happened. And she was wearing like a purse, so she obviously wanted somebody to take her shit off her. Like that's the difference. It's very rape and sexual assault is one of these very few, because it's not. Wait,
so going back to the professor for a second.
Yeah.
If he stuck his tongue down some grad student's throat.
Maybe she was asking for it. Maybe she was like, hey,
totally
professor,
not where I was going with that.
I really wanted your tongue
I don't know,
near my tonsils.
That's not a crime. That's horrible behavior, is that necessarily like a law enforcement crime? That's something I would expect a university.
It's sexual assault if she wasn't willing, and like, who knows the context,
right?
Like,
right. I don't know what happened, who said
like,
it.
Was he pinning her down and sticking his tongue versus like, were they making out or whatever?
So I'll shut up since I don't know what I'm talking about. But my question is,
since when has that stopped me from?
So the question is, the university does the investigation, or they kind of handle
in
the
these
situation?
cases that I'm citing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what happened. From what I can see, and I could be. Listen. I think really, as a rule of thumb, before I say anything, just assume I said I could be wrong, but before I'm saying whatever I'm saying. From what I can see, they're legal complaints, but for whatever reason, it does not appear that the cops were called. This man is in no danger of going to jail.
So what?
It seems to be for students and teachers who are sexual assault, who have been accused and convicted of sexual assault. It seems to me that the worst consequence tends to be you get kicked out of school, you lose your job, you lose your scholarship, you whatever. That's what I've read when I've read, because God, how many times have we read this garbage? Mm-hmm. And it always seems like the consequence is this person get kicked out of school. It's not. He was brought up in trial and sent to jail for doing the criminal crime that he committed.
The criminal crime is the worst type of crime.
Everybody knows that. So anyway, this is a quote. Students often, I think this is from Washington Post. Students often, Wall Street Journal maybe? No, Washington Post sounds more right. Schools often choose to resolve complaints outside the court system, but within the constraints of the tenure system, coming up with workarounds for accused faculty members. For example, keep your office door open. Don't mentor any women. No coffee or dinner with students. Hey, which of those things do you think I'm the most mad about?
I just heard coffee and I'm like perked up.
So Hammond, you are a coach, hypothetically, and you're a monster person. And instead of saying like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have a monster person on our staff, what we should say is he just shouldn't be near women. So we're going to have, so I'm a female student. I had these 5 professors in my department, one of whom could mentor me. Well, Hammond's a monster person, so now I've got the 4. So instead of saying, like, hey, maybe Hammond should be punished for his shitty behavior, we're like, hey, women, like, I know it's a smaller pool, and I know you might not, maybe you're losing an opportunity to have somebody extremely influential in your career and your academic life, but, guy, he likes boobs, so, like, I don't know what to tell you girls. I don't know. So anyway, my point is women are punished for the fact that dudes can't keep in their fucking pants while they're at work. Number 2, University of Wisconsin.
Is this also like this week?
It's all in one thing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know the timing of it. I was doing this on my lunch break at work today. An urban and regional planning professor at University of Wisconsin. His name is Harvey Jacobs. Oh, so this is in December. So this whole thing about not mentoring any women was extended to men. So if you've been accused, you can no longer mentor anybody. I think there was more, but I definitely didn't write it down. University of Michigan, state of the Midwest, statistics professor Edward Rothman. He was also accused of sexual misconduct. He has agreed to, quote, limit student contact to classroom teaching and regularly scheduled office hours and to, quote, not socialize with students, which includes but is not limited to having meals or coffee with students, according to his settlement received by the Journal. So, yeah.
This is hardly a punishment.
Wait, you mean you don't want to hang out with your students all the time?
I think a lot of college professors are like, wait, I don't have to. All right.
Yeah. So I went to school at Ball State University, and like the professors and the students had an unspoken rule that like the kids hung out in, like the students hung out in the Village and the professors hung out in downtown Muncie, and never the twain shall meet. Yeah. Although downtown Muncie was the only gay bar, so my roommate was a lesbian, so we were there a lot. So Will Malari, who's an independent Title IX workplace investigator and attorney, said what I would argue is a very good quote. What kind of message does it send that you're allowing somebody to work on campus, but you don't trust them with students?
Right.
I feel like that is as succinct as I could ever put it.
That is good.
I just, you know, Hemant, you know when I just.
I hear you.
Anyway, that's that.
Let's talk about CrossFit.
What? Why? I don't want to.
Too bad. This is your exercise for the week. CrossFit.
How dare you? I climbed up so many stairs in Wrigley Field. You don't even know my life. Go ahead.
I moved once this week, so I'm practically doing CrossFit.
Yeah, we're really fit.
Yeah.
Good for us.
So I know. So CrossFit, the fitness people, they have a guy who is kind of their de facto spokesman on Twitter.
For CrossFit as a thing?
As a thing.
Not just for like one
CrossFit
gym?
is an organization, and they have the gyms affiliated with them. But he is their...
Can you give me his name? Because I have a picture of what I think he looks like in my head, and I want to look it up and see if I'm right.
It does not look like that. His name is Russell Berger. You figure out how to spell it. But he's technically their legal researcher. I've also heard people saying he was... a spokesperson. He has different titles, but the one that CrossFit said is he's their legal researcher. And basically, here's the story you need to know. Yeah, that's
God,
he looks like
right.
a CrossFit guy.
You're absolutely right. I was wrong. He looks like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. So basically, here's the story.
Shit, he's ripped, though.
Is he? I'll take your word for it. All right.
I showed him a picture. Assuming that's him, he's wearing sunglasses. All white dudes look the same to me. Go ahead, my friend.
So the story at CrossFit...
Yep.
The story at CrossFit is that in Indiana, one of their gyms was going to have a workout session specifically for LGBTQ pride, or at least for members of that community.
Okay.
The owners of that gym canceled that session, basically bigotry. And in response, a bunch of their coaches and employees quit in retaliation.
So I'm a little confused about... Who scheduled the LGBTQ?
My guess
was it like
is the
Indiana
employees.
Maybe
the employees are like, I'm scheduling a workout session on this day. It's specifically for
Gotcha. So it's not
LGBTQ
like
people.
CrossFit USA said every gym is going to have. Okay.
Nope, just this one.
Gotcha.
So the owners canceled it. A bunch of the employees quit in response, and
Right.
eventually the gym had to shut down because And
where in Indiana was this?
I don't know.
Okay.
But Russell Berger, this guy who's the spokesperson, who is someone who works for CrossFit, basically, he applauded the owners.
Fuck.
And basically said things like, Indie Pride is a celebration of sin. He said things
Russell.
like, he said the tactics of some in the LGBTQ movement go against the freedom of expression.
Oh, this was downtown Indy. So we're not talking
random
like
rural area.
Muncie, Indiana, where I lived.
He also said
Which
things
is very
like,
liberal. I don't know what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
He also said it's a celebration of sin. Yeah. He also added, these are my personal beliefs, as if that matters when you're on Twitter on the same account you use for everything else. In any case... He did all this, and it didn't stop. Like, CrossFit basically fired this guy. And the CEO said, in a statement that you don't really hear CEOs make, his name is Greg Glassman, he said, first of all, he's, quote, crazy proud of the gay community in CrossFit.
Cool.
Which is why you want to take action against this guy.
Good start.
He also added... talking about Russell Berger, he needs to take a big dose of shut the fuck up and hide out for a while.
Oh, no!
Yeah. He also said, we do so much good work with such pure hearts. To have some zealot in his off time do something this stupid, we're all upset. The whole company's upset. This changes his standing with us. What that looks like, I don't know. It's unfortunate. And then later he was fired.
Hey, man, let's start doing CrossFit.
Yeah, let's not.
I might.
We'll see if I can get to a push-up. We'll get there.
My brother does CrossFit, and when he started, he was like, I threw up during my workout again the other day. And I was like,
congrats.
You're not selling that very well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, CrossFit fired this guy, who, by the way, is a Christian pastor who also happens to work for CrossFit, but who cares what you do?
I bet he's a youth pastor. He sits in chairs backwards.
Like, people are saying, well, he has a right to his free speech, whatever. You don't get to avoid consequences for stupid speech.
Do we need to have the talk about what free speech means again?
We do not. but the people who are complaining sure as hell need to.
Emphatically pointed to him and me, implying that he knows exactly what free speech is.
Damn right.
And he's stepping on my free speech to talk about it.
Can we talk about one other stupid person and then we'll move on to something totally different?
Yeah.
Which is another stupid person. Let's talk about
When do we stop
I know,
talking
the
about
whole
stupid
podcast
people?
is stupid people.
Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz, what are you doing, my dude? You're a cardiothoracic surgeon. What happened?
Yeah, but let's premise this by saying he used to be like this brilliant physician. He's written papers talking about...
He's a cardiothoracic surgeon. He is the real deal.
He's like Ben Carson before Ben Carson became Ben Carson and got crazy. Like, he was a brilliant guy doing whatever it is he did. And here's the tweet that Dr. Oz, or the people who run his account, posted the other day. For centuries, we have used astrological signs to examine our personality and how we interact with those around us. However, these signs may reveal a great deal about our health as well.
Sorry. I wish you guys could see Evan's hands when he reads quotes like that. He does this like la-da-la thing with his hands. Like deep-a-doop-a-doop. Anyway, go ahead.
You're fired. And
First of all, how dare you?
So he's promoting astrology. It wasn't just a tweet. He had an astrologer come on his show, which it's not even
his show still on?
Yeah. It's not even the first time he's had her on, but this is the first time, like, I think the tweet came too. But basically, you have a guy who used to be brilliant once, now hawking astrology as a potential health tool, which is not just I know he's gotten plenty of criticism for pushing pseudoscience on his show.
Deserved criticism.
Very well deserved. But in this case, I think this follows suit where it's like, if there are people dumb enough to believe that you're right, that astrology guides their thinking, they may not see a real doctor in times of when they're hurting. And that's a problem. By the way, he also included a link in that tweet that went to his show's website, and I was clicking through the slideshow they included. Here's one of the things the slideshow said. This is what the guest, the astrologer, this is stuff she said. Leos, for example, are embodied by the arms, forearms, and hands of the Vitruvian man in the Da Vinci painting. She also said pain or tightness in the hands and fingers may occur more often for this star sign.
Yes. So I'm halfway through listening. Sawbones is a podcast I've talked about a lot.
Okay.
That it's a comedian and his... a woman who's a physician and her comedian husband.
Yeah.
And they go through, it's a medical history show. It's very funny and very informative, and I could not recommend it more highly to people who like this kind of content. But they literally put out a podcast today. I was halfway through before Hemant picked me up for dinner. And she was diving into the history of this, which is...
Of astrology?
Of medical astrology.
Oh, okay.
And it is much more complicated than I ever understood, because apparently every star sign or sun sign, I think technically, so like what you call, so like I'm a Libra, that's my sun sign, I think, because that's where the sun was when I was born. So, but then there's your moon sign and your blah, 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 and like where the, and it gets more complicated because we had better technology to track like the celestial bodies, right? So instead of being like, okay, Mercury was like here-ish, that like we did 200 years ago, we can be like, okay, we can say exactly not only where Mercury was, but what its like position was in compared to Venus and the moon, and that means something different.
Astrologers have more science to promote their bullshit.
Yeah, no, honestly, and it gets more complicated and it sounds more sciencey because they're using quote unquote real calculations, which are. Right? Like the moon was in a certain place when I was born to make the leap. That means, first of all, Libra means that I'm balanced. LOL, have you met me?
I should have said, I said Leos were embodied by their arms. I lied. She was actually talking about Geminis, and it doesn't matter because it's all made up anyway.
It doesn't. But that's the other thing is like, if you are this sign, it affects your face more and you're going to have more problems with your throat. Or if you're this, like you have problems with reproductive health, which is the most buck wild thing to believe. It's one thing with like personality of like, oh, you tend to be more greedy because that's so nebulous. Yeah. But like, it's really black and white if I like tend to get headache. Like if like my husband gets a lot of headaches, I don't get a lot of headaches. If somebody tells me Libra's got a lot of headaches, I'd be like, no.
Pain and tightness in the hands and fingers may happen more often. Well, yeah, as you get older, you're going to get more pain and tightness. That's not unique.
And how is that actionable, I guess, is my question.
That's the other thing. If you're sick or you're feeling pain, what are you going to do? Talk to an astrologer who says you're in pain?
Listen to me. This is what they do. If you subscribe to this particular worldview. So say you're getting your tonsils out, right? If you believe in this sort of faction of astrology, you would go to your person and they would say, well, you want to make sure you get your tonsils out when Mercury is in retrograde or when the moon is in its third phase or what, like that's the kind of thing. And yes, you're 100% right. There are definitely like people don't go to doctors soon enough, and that's always the problem with pseudoscience and pseudomedicine. But like, isn't that buck wild to be like, hey, Hemant, we need to like do heart surgery, and you're like, BRB, I gotta make sure Mercury is, the only thing I know is Mercury is in retrograde, so I'm gonna keep using that as a goof.
Yeah.
Like, that is what it's buck wild. It is a maddeningly crazy thing.
I once dated someone
Oh my
who
God.
believes all of this and has since gone on to write horoscopes and still believes them. It
You
boggles
dated
my
this
mind.
person?
It was before it really kicked in.
Uh-huh.
But it's still...
Really?
And I always wonder, like, oh, I have so many things I want to say about this.
You
But I
should
also...
interview this person.
No.
Did you not This is the second time you've brought up like a former flame to me tonight. I feel like I'm really getting to know you well after 6 years of working very closely with you.
I know, right? It's a question
wait,
of like...
Are
what
they a person I would have heard of?
No,
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. But I'm just like, I want to have this argument, but at the same time, like, we haven't talked in a long time. We're acquaintances, but it's like, it's been a long
Are
time.
you like Facebook friends or
yeah,
like
yeah. And so it's like, I'm not just going to say hi for the sake of telling you I think you're wrong about stuff.
I'm sorry, men do that to me all the time on the internet, so I don't see why you have to be the better person here. Also, really quick,
I don't think I'm the better person. I'm just saying.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I've never like quote unquote believed in astrology and any important thing. I used to love to read my horoscope.
Yeah.
Did you ever fall in that sort of?
I'm sure I read them for the sake of like, oh, this seems interesting a while ago.
I feel like it's the same things like reading fortune cookies or something like that. Of like I would never break up with somebody because like our star or sun signs weren't aligned, but like people do that and people take it really seriously. And
I'd never remember reading the horoscopes for the sake of because I thought they were true. If I read them now, I'd be like, oh, this makes me angry. I think there was a long time, though, where I would look at them. And I'm like, people believe this. That's a little weird. But I never thought much about it.
Right. In the Chicago Tribune has the Red Eye. I think it's still going. It's like their free daily paper, their commuter paper. And I used to read it every day on my way to work, like on the train or on the bus rather. And I read my horoscope every day. I did literally nothing with that information. It was just like the way you check the weather for 5 days from now. Like I'm not going to do anything to plan around it because it's going to change. It doesn't mean that much. But like, well, I guess I'll read it. I don't know.
I mean, if you ever want just a simple way to disprove it or something, cut up the horoscopes, take out the Libra, Gemini, whatever. Just have what it says about it. Toss them on the ground. Let the person who believes them tell you which one matches up with which one.
Oh, interesting.
See how many they get. I mean, if it's 12 signs, they should get however many right. But whatever, a couple at most.
Do you remember when Penn and Teller had a show on
bullshit?
Bullshit, yeah. They did a cool, and I'm sure they weren't the first nor the last to do this, but it's one I remember, is they went to a classroom and were talking to like, this is what star signs are, and tell me all these things about like the time you were born and where you were born and, obviously the date. And we're going to print out this like, this profile that's really going to like get you to understand yourself. And so they printed out the exact same thing for every single person and handed it out specific because it's all like you're quiet until people get to know you,
right.
or
you're extroverted, but you do like staying in sometimes.
Yeah, which is so unusual for so many. Is there something about wanting to feel unique in that respect, whereas we're all kind of the same most of the time?
I always thought it was the opposite, that you wanted to feel understood, that there's some larger force kind of overtaking your life, that you can't help it if you're like this because this is who you were meant to be. I think that gives comfort to a lot of people.
See, I find that I see it's the like I feel in these kinds of cases, I see people bragging about sort of mundane things. And I think that's part of it. Like the one that like, you would rather stay home than go out dancing. And people like brag about that as if having an opinion about a thing is something.
I'm a Pisces.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Here's a story
Dr.
that...
Oz, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah. Here's a story that bothered me for so many reasons. And I've gotten criticism, I think, from atheists on this too. So hear me out here. Let's see what happens.
God.
The story that I read, that I saw so much online in the span of like a day, is that an Ethiopian pastor was doing a baptism and then died because a crocodile got to him.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read you what the BBC article, because it was on the BBC's website, said. His name, Docho Esheti, was conducting the ceremony for about 80 people at some place. Residents and police told BBC Amharic, like a subsidiary of BBC, a crocodile leapt from the water during the baptism and attacked him. The pastor died after being bitten on his legs, back, and hands. Yes.
We talked about this earlier on our drive over here. This is what I was talking to you about when we'll talk about it later.
I totally don't remember this.
We were driving here. It was when I was peeling that old ass sticker off your car. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah. So anyway, I read the story and I'm like, there's no way this actually happened. And then I saw so many articles about this thing that makes you think, no, it totally happened. And so here's my argument for why I don't believe this story.
You don't think it's true on its face?
I don't think it's true at all.
Really?
And it's on the BBC's website, which they're credible. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But here's my problem with it, okay? If you look this story up, you will find a million articles about it. All of them, I think, just about all of them, will say, according to the BBC, because they're all citing this single article, right? The BBC article says they didn't do their original reporting on this. They're citing a BBC affiliate in Ethiopia, or that covers Ethiopia. So I went to that article on their website. And it's one of those, like, it's in another language. I have to use Google Translate to make sense of it.
Okay.
That article seemed like, this seems pretty shoddy reporting. It sounds like you're getting, like, third-hand reporting from people who said this sort of thing happened.
Okay.
How do you have 80 people for a baptism and nobody has a phone? Nobody has videotape of any of this? Also, just to keep going on this, no photos, no videos. I've heard stories like this before, too, and, like, they're never true. Last year, there was a story about a Zimbabwe pastor who was trying to walk on water, and then, he drowned and got eaten by crocodiles. That story had witnesses, allegedly. And
this also feels very white people thinking everybody in Africa gets eaten by crocodiles.
Something like that.
It's like the way you die in Africa is either eaten by crocodiles or run down by wildebeests.
Yeah. Snopes said that story about the walking on water getting eaten by crocodiles. They said that was false. And even the Daily Mail, which is notorious for spreading stories like this, posted an article saying that one was satirical. Who's writing about it? The story was spread initially by the usual cast of people who propagate bullshit stories, which is like Fox News, British tabloids, stuff like that. It's not like the New York Times was reporting on this because they talked to people and they went there. It's all like, it goes back to one source. And I read that article and I don't trust that source. Like, just reading the article, it's like, I don't think you talked to these people firsthand. I don't know.
And
here's what I wrote. There's like, my title of the piece was, "No, an Ethiopian pastor did not get eaten by a crocodile during a baptism." And the argument I heard back is like, you don't know that he didn't. Which,
that's not how skeptics talk.
Well, which is fair. Like, I made a definitive statement. They're like, maybe he did. You don't know. But the point is, I'm like, people seem to be believing the story. I know that because they're sending me the story saying, look at how stupid this guy was.
Right.
It's like, I don't think this actually happened. Anyway, I'm holding out. I'm gonna pull a conspiracy theory here. I don't think this actually happened. I want more evidence on this one, and I don't think I'm going to get it because every article about this just cites back the same original faulty story.
So if nothing else, it's poor reporting. Like,
It's
even if it's
absolutely
true,
poor
we don't
reporting.
have enough evidence to say that it's
Yeah,
true.
the BBC is saying, look at one of our affiliates. Look at what they said It's like even the BBC, the credible source, is not citing a credible source.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, because a few people sent this to us. Yes, we don't believe in religion. I am not pro people dying.
Yeah,
I just want to be clear.
I don't want this
is not
to
something
die.
that like I am comfortable, and I get it. Like it's a very, I mean, I think it is, now that you say that, obviously it's probably almost certainly not true. But even if it was true, like it's
we're not gloating
Yeah,
about
it's not my jam to gloat about somebody dying. Like
I wasn't saying it to gloat about it, but just to say
I know. But like even like people who like get bit by snakes and things like that, you like, yes, they made poor decisions.
Right.
I do not want these people to also die. Like I really, you know what? I feel like it's important to make my stand there. I am anti people dying, even if it's under stupid circumstances.
Yes. So I don't know. Everyone who has sent me the story seems very convinced it's legit.
Yeah, I've gotten it too.
I'm a doubter. Prove me wrong, people. And by the way, why would you baptize anybody in crocodile-infested water?
Yeah, I mean, it's all not great, and it does have a tinge of like xenophobia and like it doesn't quite pass the smell test.
You'll hear another story like it next year too.
So I had sort of an intro. So today's been a wild day. Just a lot of crazy news happening. Do you know who Kat Von D is? Is this somebody in your sphere?
As of 3 hours ago, yes.
Oh, it is? Okay. So Kat Von D is somebody who is a tattoo artist and a reality show celebrity and has apparently, what I hear from a lot of my friends, a very good makeup line.
Okay.
And she... So the only thing I know her from is when I was in college, so that would have been 10 years ago or so, 10, 12 years ago, she was on one of those, remember when like tattoo shows were super popular in like 2006? She was on one of those. She does really good portrait tattoo work, which we've all seen the bad ones. When they're bad, they're aggressively bad. But she's a very talented tattoo artist. She also has a very like alt goth sort of rebellious punk aesthetic going for her. She has face tattoos. She's like gorgeous. It's fine. It feels whatever. It is what it is.
Okay, she's a good artist.
She's a good artist, and she's somebody that people have followed. And so many people follow on social media. She's like a Kylie Jenner type, and she has this apparently great makeup line. And the first headline I saw regarding this story was Kat Von D comes out as an anti-vaxxer, and that's a huge bummer, or something to that effect. And so I reached out to some people who like kind of know that, and I was like, okay, I know who Kat Von D is. Tell me why I care about her opinion. So essentially what happened was she's vegan. She's very like crunchy in that sort of way, not to disparage on vegans, just is in that sort of lifestyle. And when she announced her pregnancy and was very much like, we're going to raise this boy vegan, and we're not going to vaccinate him. We don't believe in X, Y, Z. And people are, of course, like falling all over themselves to be like, oh my God, you're so brave. I don't think I need to explain to our listening audience why anti-vaxxers are really, really dangerous. But nonetheless, it is a bummer anytime somebody with any sort of platform comes out against vaccinations, because even when they couch it, which I think she did, she didn't specifically say it causes autism. She didn't say that. She was just like, it's just not part of our plan for this kid, and it's very personal and whatever. That's always a stone cold bummer, because it is somebody speaking from both a place of privilege and a place of ignorance. As many commenters pointed out, it's ironic that, the vaccination needle is the one needle she doesn't want anything to do with. Well played, internet. It's very good, internet. And so I have this like feminist Facebook group that I'm in, and like a lot of times I'll like do like cultural touch points of like, why do I care what Kat Von D thinks about, like, I literally said I'm going to talk about it on the podcast, like, why is this somebody who is worth mentioning? So it turns out we shouldn't care what she says, because she's an anti-Semite and a neo-Nazi. Really? So I guess what I'm saying is like, maybe we should just kind of throw her out in the trash, metaphorically, and not literally. I'm not threatening anybody, but like maybe she's not a person we need to listen to anymore. The reason I was concerned
having no one knowledge of who she is that she has 12 million Instagram followers, which is where she posted this.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care what other beliefs you have. You clearly have a fan base.
Yes.
And some of them are going to see it and say, all right, no certain foods for my baby, which, by the way, I had to look that up, too, because I'm like, I'm vegetarian.
Yeah.
And, kids don't eat a ton of meat.
Right.
But it happens. And, I'm not
But
fighting
they're not
that one.
vegan.
But they're definitely not vegan. And it's like, when you look it up, what I saw was basically you could do it, but you got to do it the right way because your kids need some certain types of nutrition. So you got to make sure they're getting the following things, even if they're not eating meat. And the thing is, so you have to do it the right way. You have to do it very carefully. Just saying, well, they're not going to get this food. That's a different issue. You better do that right.
Yeah, it's one thing for an adult.
Yeah.
Or even a teen.
And they would say this to you even if you became vegan at our age or something. It's that's fine. You can be vegan. That's possible. But you still need the following, to make sure you're getting this in your body.
Yeah.
And vegans know that. And they know how to get around it. And that's fine. But the vaccination
And I want to
thing,
be clear, I could not care any less about adults' dietary habits. I feel like vegans often feel attacked because people are always like, how do you get your protein? As if that's I give a shit how anybody gets their protein. Apparently that's a thing vegans get a lot. So I want to be clear, make your own choices, row your own canoe, whatever. Babies though, but
yeah,
also,
what are you doing
but
to your
also
kids?
I'm sort of on this weird thing of I feel like moms particularly get so much shit on every choice they make for their baby.
No, but this is
that
legitimate.
another
You
thing?
should get shit for this because it's a dumb decision. Kat Von D.
But I just feel like people are like, oh, I give my kid a pacifier and I get shit for it, or I don't give my kid a
Yeah,
as
this is
a
why
non-parent,
I don't tell anybody what I do with my kids because I don't care what you think about it.
Yeah.
But on this one where it's no, this is a matter of your child's health.
Yeah.
Not just they'll turn out weird if they have a passy in their mouth. No, this is your kid's not going to make it.
That was definitely a direct quote from somebody, wasn't it? Fucking weird kids.
Unquote.
I was always told that I sucked my thumb too long and I would get buck teeth. I had braces. I still have garbage teeth. No, maybe we just shouldn't listen to this idiot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Also, people apparently feed their pets vegan diets.
Dude.
That I'm not down with. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't even like animals. And I'm that's
no,
wrong.
you don't like animals. I haven't always inspects Daddy's foods whenever he comes over. He's like, are you giving this dog the proper nutrition?
I got one more story for you that is...
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
It's fine.
It is fine. Save the equipment.
Okay, you talk. I'm going to clean.
All right. So Denmark just passed a burqa ban. They did this on Thursday. They basically banned the Islamic face coverings, the burqa, the niqab, from public spaces. Basically, if women are caught, I'm sorry, this happened last week, but if they're caught wearing either one, they could be hit with a fine worth $150 American dollars.
So you said it's a face...
The face veil, the cover up their face, or just the hijab over their heads.
Really?
I'm sorry, not the hijab. Hijab is fine.
Okay.
It's the face coverings. But basically, you can get $150 to a $1,500 fine, depending on how often
Didn't France do this a couple years ago?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think France does have this sort of restriction.
Okay.
So does Austria. So does Belgium. And the biggest problem I have with this, they're doing it for security purposes. They say it's assimilation as well. The problem I have with it is
assimilation
when
is
you... That's a
not
touchy
great.
word there. Yeah. When you're telling, one of the criticisms people have of radical Islam is these people are telling women they have to cover themselves. And we're like, no, give them freedom to wear what they want. Because the argument I've always heard from atheists too is, I don't like the burqa. I wish they didn't wear the niqab or whatever. But I wish they really legitimately had a choice.
Right.
Because that's a different story. The problem is they don't always have that choice.
But it's not for you or I to say, because if you ask many of these women who wear hijabs or
they want
writ
to.
large,
they tell you they want to wear it for whatever reason.
Is there an argument to be made of it comes from a really patriarchal culture where women are punished for having faces and being quote unquote sexually desirable? Yes. Is that whole thing problematic? Yes. That said, each individual woman, I can't sit down and be condescendingly, do you understand why you make the choices? That's
and
shitty.
what Denmark is doing is saying, we don't want these the patriarchal culture, the Muslim men making this decision. We're going to make the decision for you.
It's
you
all
can't
bad.
wear
It's
it.
bad all over. There's nothing good about this.
Yeah, like the idea that if we condemn Muslims, radical Muslims, whatever, who demand that women wear these coverings, we should condemn people who force them against wearing it.
Nobody should tell me what I can or cannot appear in public. Right? Like, there are other ways to do security than telling women you have to show parts of your body that you don't want to show. Yes. If I walk down the street in a tank top, which is all I wear in the summer, and somebody's mad because they can see my shoulders.
And in the Chicago winters.
I have very tough shoulders. Everybody knows that about me. Nobody has the right to say, Jessica, you cannot show X, Y, or Z. By the same token, if I want to wear long sleeves to work every day, nobody has the right to say, like, no, you need to show your arms for whatever reason.
We can look at you funny, but that's different from saying you can't do it.
Yeah, like, you can be an asshole of your own merits, but the law can't tell me to do anything.
Amnesty International said of the Denmark ban, this blanket ban is neither necessary nor proportionate and violates the rights to freedom of expression and religion. Even the Center for Inquiry did it in Germany when they were considering a proposal like this last year. They said something very similar. Such a ban would constitute a retreat from the protection of freedom of religion and expression. This retreat could worsen tensions, embolden the country's extremist nationalists, and push Muslim women and girls who are already in a vulnerable state deeper into fear and isolation. Because what's going to happen if they
don't leave their house?
They don't leave their house.
If
they don't get a choice about this stuff. And that's not good for anybody either.
Right.
So
here's my question, and I'm doing the thing that I hate, which is sort of playing devil's advocate, but it's actually a conversation I want to have. If I walk around downtown Chicago with a mask on my face, that would seem suspicious and draw attention. And
maybe if you're a cop, I would be like, that's weird. I'm going to keep an eye out on you for a little bit because I want to see what's going on, maybe.
Right.
It doesn't mean I'm doing anything to you or stopping you.
Well, but not like cops have the most sterling reputation of just keeping an eye on people.
But there would have to be some cause, right, for them to do anything, in theory. That's different from saying you can't do that.
Like if this is just like...
This is like an
airport.
A thought. This isn't...
Yeah, this is definitely like a thought... Not thought crime. What is it? Thought experiment. Thank you. If I only left my house if I was wearing a Phantom of the Opera mask.
Yes.
Or just like a full-on, like, cover my face mask, I can see, you can't see me. Is that something that, like, would that be, if not just like I did it once, if it was my custom, every time I went to downtown Chicago, if I lived there, I walked around the city streets and always had a mask on, would at some point people be like, maybe that isn't, no, right?
They would let you do it.
Yeah.
We would just look at you funny, which is fine. I think
I just talked myself out of it because I was like, God, I feel like if somebody never showed their face, I'd be kind of suspicious of them. But like, no, fuck off. You don't get to do that. I get to wear whatever the fuck I want in public. Cool. Talked myself out of a garbage opinion.
Nicely
Good
done.
Job again, Jessica.
I got nothing else.
I got one
Go for
more. And I actually think I stole this from you because I couldn't find a lot of stories I was crazy about. An ex-lesbian is super chill and thinks the MeToo movement...
Ex-lesbian.
Ex-lesbian.
Yes.
Did I gloss over that too quickly?
I just wanted to make sure we heard that.
Yeah. So for a Christian website, there's a woman who is an ex-lesbian, and she is really concerned about women embracing the Me Too movement. I would love, Hemant, if you'll permit me, I would love to read some excerpts.
What did she say?
This is honestly maybe one of my favorite sentences I've ever read. In the past, while living as a lesbian for 14 years, my beliefs were far to the left and I supported women's rights.
I used to, but I'm not one of those people anymore.
Like, the tone is so like... like when baby boomers are like, yeah, in the 60s when I was like all about free love and smoked pot every day. Like, that's how I feel like, ugh, I thought women should have rights. What an asshole I was. I grew up. When I look at all the women who have left the homosexual lifestyle and knowing the hate they have for men, again, I really want to be clear. I do hate men. It has nothing to do with my feminism. It just has to do with my life experience.
Yes.
This Me Too movement could lead even Christian women in the wrong direction. I would never want them to lose what the Lord has taught us in the world regarding his order. He made us. He knows how best men and women are meant to go through life together, submitting to one another, LOL, and humbling themselves before the Father. And then she quotes a bunch of scripture, and I really want to dig into this. This kind of immorality has caused many women to suffer great... Okay, so she talked about men being garbage people to women, as they are wont to do. This kind of immorality, men assaulting women, I want to be clear, when she says immorality, she means assault, has caused many women to suffer grave injustices perpetrated by men through sexual, physical, and verbal abuse. These injustices were never a part of God's plan, as the secular progressives would like us to believe, and have fueled movements like the feminist movement, capital F, capital M.
Wait. So the God that has genocide and incest.
Yeah,
and all?
but he didn't he didn't want you to hit women.
Oh, all right. So it's always interesting to hear from these ex-lesbians because they're super passionate.
And a really important faction. I might have thrown away my notes for this. Sometimes I get really excited. The Me Too movement. So instead, this is part of the enemy's plan. And our real enemy, as you know, is...
Satan.
Satan. You got it, Hammett. Good job.
It's always Satan.
Sorry, I almost threw away that last line, and it felt like a really important line. Well, it's because it was all Bill Donohue's words, and I just didn't want to look at them anymore. So anyway, that's going away now.
Yes.
So yeah. In conclusion, God's plan isn't for men to hit women, but if they do, kind of like she doesn't necessarily offer solutions.
By the way, this has been these past few weeks for churches and the Me Too movement has been pretty bad for them.
Yeah,
there's a lot of bad eggs in the church. It
sure does feel like every week is worse than the week before it, huh?
Yes.
Huh? Doesn't it?
It does.
I have listener mail.
What?
Yeah. Oh, it's not here. It's here. Okay, this listener mail is written to me, which I didn't realize until I was printing it out. Thank you. By the way, if you have a question or comment or concern that you'd like to share with Hemant and myself, you
friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, please. We both get them. Hemant usually responds, and then I respond later. Sometimes. Jessica, you know I started this. You're awesome. Keep it shut. I do feel weird saying nice things about me because I'm so used to reading garbage things. You're awesome. Keep shouting curse words at the top of your lungs for all the world to hear. You're a free woman who's free to use whatever language you want. Right on, sister. Fuck those assholes who think you need to, quote, tone it down for atheism to be accepted.
This is a good question.
This is a great question. I bolded the part I meant to read. I'm just going to read this whole thing anyway. Listen, I have so much shit flung at me each week. I want to read the nice things once in a goddamn while. Hemant. That's like saying kneeling for the national anthem isn't an appropriate activity for football because it makes people uncomfortable. Praise you and Hemant, your act 2 aside.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Praise you and Hemant aside, comma, I have a question. So, due to a series of less than stellar life choices, I'm a 32-year-old single mom living with my very Catholic parents in Texas. Non-religious childcare is basically non-existent. What alternatives to Christian-based, quote, Mother's Day off programs can you find or recommend for my 18-month-old daughter? Thank you for keeping me sane in this Jesus-soaked hellhole I currently call home. Much love, Penguiny.
That is such a tough question.
Now,
I would love to hear
as
your
having zero children, I do have an 18-month-old dog, so like I'm really an authority to speak on this. No, I think this is a thing that that a lot of people deal with. I think there's a lot of iterations of this in various people's lives. So whether it's you're a teenager who's living under your parents' roof and have to deal with that kind of thing, whether you're a college student whose parents are paying for your education and you have to deal with that, whether you are depending on people in your life to survive and raise your human child.
Yeah, and your parents are the only option for babysitting.
Your parents are the only option. We hear this a lot of like my in-laws will watch my kid, but they bring it to church. I'm very maternal.
Yes.
So I in conclusion, don't have a lot of advice.
I don't either. I was
Cool,
going to say,
good for us.
if childcare, if you need childcare and the only option is religion, is a religious-based service, my first thought was like, well, first of all, go take care of your mental health and drop the kid off. Don't deal with that stuff later, because there are plenty of people who have grown up in religious homes who will eventually grow out of it. You can also talk to your kid about it later when they're old enough to kind of know what's going on.
So 18 months.
They're not doing much.
Okay.
They're not even really...
So, I mean, they're like playing with the Noah's Ark set 2x2, right?
Yeah.
That's not...
Yeah, but they're not ready to tell you exactly what's going on with Noah, per se. They're not
you
quite
mean
there yet.
how God killed an entire planet except for Noah and his
Genocide, because God loves us.
Yep.
And so
Rainbows,
they're not quite, they're not quite there yet. But, I mean, they're picking up on stuff. And if you were dropping your kids off at your parents or their grandparents or whatever, and the same thing happened, it'd be like, look, I need the babysitters. I'm dropping them off. But we're going to have a conversation about what you're learning here, because other people have different opinions on this stuff. And I want to make sure you're hearing that too.
Yeah.
Again, this is my mindset, which is the babysitting / daycare / anything like that is more important to me than specifically what they're learning there. Because what's the alternative? That you stay home and take care of them? You're going to go crazy, and you're not making any money then because you're not working. Like, you need the job. You need the time away from the kids, too. I don't know.
I think that's all good points.
What do you do if you're in Texas and you don't really have options?
I do, and kind of a thing that you hit on in passing, it was like, take care of yourself, too. Like, you're no good to nobody if you're tearing your hair out or if you need to get away from your kids. Like, that's just a recipe for... So I tend to agree with him in that, yes, like, as long as your in-laws or whomever are keeping the child alive, that seems like an okay thing, especially at 18 months. Here's the question I do have for you, Hemant.
Yes.
So I think that okay. Sorry, I need to collect my thoughts better. So I don't think that it is necessarily a good thing to insulate and isolate yourself, right? Like, you know, if and when I have kids, I'm not going to say, if they want to go to church or something, I'm not going to say, absolutely not, you can't. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, especially if it is a path to open dialogue between you and your kid, right? So as a kid, I've talked about this a lot. I grew up in a really Catholic area. I didn't go to church with my parents, but if I slept over at a friend's house, you better believe I was going to church with them, and then I would come home and like live my life.
Yeah.
So a big part of me is like, it's not poison, right? Like, if your kid is coming back and you open the avenue, open the channel of dialogue and say, like, what did you learn? What does that mean to you? This is what it means to me. This is what some people believe. I don't think it's damaging. That said, like, are there like really toxic messages that could fuck a kid up?
Yeah, there are. And plenty of atheists I know have said that the psychological damage they got through growing up and dealing with that very fundamentalist type of religious thing to grow up fearing hell with anything you do that might be wrong, it's traumatizing. I know. In this case, I don't know specifically what type of church
she wasn't super specific.
Right. So I don't know that this is a fire and brimstone, you're all going to hell if you screw anything up sort of place.
Did she say?
Or just a religious church that happens to teach about God and the basic religious stories. But if you have no options, again, this is the situation you're in.
Yeah.
Okay, take them there. Just have the conversation with the kids later on about the stuff they're learning. I don't know what else you could do.
Yeah, and I wonder if, not that I like am bitter or regret, but like I don't think if I had grown up with a more open dialogue with my parents about religion because religion was something we just didn't talk about in my house. It wasn't that they were atheists or anti-theists. It was not a topic anybody cared to talk about in the house. And I wonder if I might have been a little more prepared for the world. I did not realize people didn't believe in evolution till I was in college. I didn't realize people genuinely believed in God till I was in junior high. Like, I thought it was like a thing we do, and we're all like, these are like the way you hear Aesop's fables. You get the moral, but nobody's like, yes, a leopard definitely did a thing, and that's why it has spots, right? Like, so I wonder if having that avenue of an open conversation about this is what people genuinely believe, you're welcome to, this is what I think, but you think for yourself and come to your own conclusions. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless they're telling your kid that like gay people are going to hell, and then I don't know. Am I helpful or not helpful?
No, I think it's a fair point to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was your happy thing this week, buddy?
You know what? I'll tell you this one that made me happy, which is when they had the elections on Tuesday in a bunch of states, including California. Mm-hmm. It didn't get much media attention because it was almost a foregone conclusion. But Jared Huffman, who is a Democrat from California, he's already in Congress. He's been there for a little while. And he's also the only openly non-religious member of Congress.
Oh.
He had his primary election. Mm-hmm. He crushed his primary opponents.
Physically.
And the thing is, like, no one doubted that. He's a good Democratic representative, and he has support from the people he represents. So that is not surprising. The takeaway from that, though, is this is a guy who only November came out as an atheist. Or actually, he said he's a humanist.
Since he's been in office, he came out?
Interesting. Since he's come out as an atheist, this was his first election of any kind, clearly did not matter.
Cool.
He didn't get hurt by it. It wasn't an issue. Yeah. As far as I can tell, it didn't even come up from his primary challengers. That's awesome. I hope that's a lesson to other members of Congress, especially ones who are either retiring or ones in safe seats, where they're like, yeah, I'm going to get elected. I don't even have to campaign. I'll be fine. Because there are a bunch of those. Mm-hmm. If you're an atheist, now's a really good time to come out because nobody's paying attention.
Right.
The media is not going to make a big deal about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. 5 years ago,
different
it would have been a
story. But right now, dude,
if you don't tweet anything anti-Semitic tomorrow,
at once.
Yeah.
And no matter when you do it, Trump is going to tweet something within the hour that's going to be dumb.
He's going to take over the news cycle.
Yeah. So just here's my happy story. All of you in Congress right now, all the secret atheists out there.
You know what a happy story is.
That would make me really. It made me really happy. It made me really happy that Huffman didn't seem to lose. Your happy story
can't be a call for happiness.
It made me happy that he didn't even get he didn't even flinch. Like the election went off, not even a story.
That's very exciting to hear. And I know there's a lot happening in Congress right now, and the primaries in California were a huge deal because California has a weird primary system. Right. They have like a winner take all kind of thing. So instead of saying like the Democrat with the most votes and the Republican with the most votes go up against each other, it's the top two contenders. So if there's 25 Democrats running and they split the votes and 2 Republicans, like it sets up a possibility of, even though 75% of people voted for a Democrat, it could still be 2 Republicans head to head for the general election, which is not great. Anyway, my happy thing, thank you for asking, Hammett. My happy thing.
I'm reading something that I'll tell you about in just a second.
Okay. Off mic, or can we talk?
No, we'll talk about it. It'll be brief.
So really quick, my on Wednesday. So the backstory is my dad in like 1980 bought these really good Cubs tickets when face value for really good Cubs tickets was $25 per ticket. Yeah, so it's right behind first base. So on and off my entire life, I've been very, 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 very lucky that I've had access to these seats. My dad hasn't owned them for 20 years, but we still know the people who own them. So about once every other year, we get tickets to these like excellent seats, second row behind first base. And we went on Wednesday night, and it was me and my husband, my brother, and my dad. And it was maybe the most fun I've ever had at a ball game. First of all, it was gorgeous out. Second of all, we drank many beers and ate all of the peanuts. So like my salt intake was top notch. They played the Phillies. We were literally surrounded by Phillies fans. I would say 85% of them were very nice. 15% of them were less nice and also did get kicked out because they threatened a dude. Which, listen, Phillies fans, I'm not holding it against you.
It's another day at Wrigley.
It is what it is. But it was so much fun. It was a gorgeous night. And it ended in a walk-off grand slam by Jason Hayward. My brother had left. My dad had left. It was just me and my husband.
And me watching on a TV from a distance.
And him aggressively tweeting at me, ready to blame me personally for the loss of the Cubs, which felt personal. I've never been at a ball game when it was a walk-off victory. It was just like this amalgamation of we were just drinking these 45-minute-old warm flat beers and it was so fun. If you go on my Twitter feed, I took a ton of pictures just because it was an excellent time. I'm very, very, very privileged for getting those great seats. The one guy from Philly was very nice for me. The other guy I did yell at because he said some not great language. But the Phillies played a great game. Oh, God. Also, my brother, he's going to be so happy when I say this. My brother had maybe the best the best shit talk of all time. So where our seats are, if you yell loud enough in a quiet enough spot, the first baseman can defo hear you. And the first baseman for the Phillies, his name is Carlos Santana. Mm-hmm. And so my brother, who is, if anything, louder than I am, goes,
oh, no.
Hey, Carlos! Carlos looks right at us and he goes, where's Rob Thomas? Do you get that joke?
Whitest thing you've ever said.
First of all, I didn't say it. It's my brother. And which is a very, very, very funny heckle. The funniest
that
part
I'm sure he's never heard before.
The funniest thing is the first baseman did the Hugh, the shrug emoji. He did that what the fuck are you talking about? Didn't get it and didn't care. And that was so good of he was listening. He was like, I'm ready to hear your garbage. And he was like, that wasn't even, that didn't even register.
That's great.
It was a really great evening. Anyway, what's the thing you're reading on Twitter and not listening to my great stories?
Kyrie Irving, the basketball player, the New York Times interviewed him. He's the one who really thinks the world is flat, or at least he's been part of that conspiracy theory.
No, did he figure it out?
No. The New York Times asked him repeatedly, wait, do you think the world is flat? Do you think the world is flat? Do you or do you not believe the earth is flat, or do you not know? Kyrie says, Tell me. That's what I'm asking you. No. Can you openly admit that you know the earth is constitutionally round? You know that for sure? I don't know. I was never trying to, whatever. He does this repeatedly in the interview where
he said constitutionally
round.
Bless
and
his
the
heart.
reporter is
is he on one of the
Boston Celtics, not playing right now.
So why are we talking to him?
Because he still believes the earth is flat.
Okay.
And the Times reporter is just repeatedly wait, do you believe this or no? And his answer is basically, I'm just asking questions, which is what dumb people say when they don't know stuff.
I will say, I think this is
This is the Kat Von D thing. You're famous and people are looking up to you.
Yes.
Stop saying stupid stuff even if you don't know. She at least seemed confident that she's not doing vaccine. He's like, well, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, it is a frustrating thing. I feel like that is very much of well, you can't prove there's no God. It's the same thing. It's well, okay, yes, but that doesn't feel intellectually honest. Yeah. Do we have anything else to talk about, Hannah?
No, because we're way over time.
How long did we go?
3.5 hours.
You can follow me on Twitter at Blueberry, BLUEBURIE. You can check out some pictures from Wrigley Field. Yeah. I did I was on my way to the city and I was like, I need a Pride shirt because it's Pride Month. So I did wear a Pride shirt. A lot of people stared at me more funny than I expected them to. And you can email us if you have any questions, comments, concern. You can email us at friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com.
Patreon.com/friendlyatheist.
Yeah, Hey, Hammett.
Podcast.
Sorry.
I got it out eventually.
Are we gonna watch Star Wars?
We are. It's scheduled.
It is?
Finally. Come next week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's happening.
Didn't tell me that.
We're going to watch it next week at your place.
Oh,
all right.
Cool.
And then we'll record something about what the hell I just watched.
It's going to be so fun.
Thanks, Patreons.
Thank you, Patreon, very much. If you donate, we are teeing up to do some transcripts for the episodes and eventually...
Because the one thing we really want is for these words to be written out. Yeah.
God, it's just going to be like Jessica talking over Hammond. If you want to say some not shitty things about me and Hammond, you can go on iTunes.
Leave a review with all the stars.
Yeah. And also, hey guys, just really quick, if you want to say nice things about me, you don't have to dunk on Hammond. Like, we like each other. Right?
God, sure.
Okay.
I'm so used to it from my family.
It's just
it's
like people
good.
either talk shit about me or if they want to say something nice, they're like, fuck Hammond, Jess is the best. I'm like, well, I feel like there's somewhere in between that we're going to do okay at.
It can't possibly be healthy for anybody that I'm just like, what? People are saying, whatever, move on.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely more healthy for me to read every mean thing anyone's ever written about me and then show it to everybody I know. We both have ways of dealing with being internet people. Neither is healthy.
I saw this. Speaking of which, someone said on Twitter, like, what the hell happened to Hammett from Friendly Atheist? And so I saw that.
What happened to you?
What happened to him? And I'm like, so I wrote back to the guy because I'm like, stranger. Like, what did I do?
What did you do?
He wrote back, no, that was literally me saying, like, I wonder what happened to him. I hadn't read his stuff in a long time. I wonder if he's still around. I'm like, I am here. I thought
I've been at the same website for 10 fucking years.
I'm like, I thought I did something wrong and you were mad about it. He's like, oh no. I was just like, oh, hey, you're alive. Good to hear from you.
Cool.
All right.
As long as they're looking out for you, my dude.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
so we'll talk to you next week. Bye.